Hello, 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 hello. What is up, Asian man? I'm glad you're here. Hey, Hope. How's it going, Hope? What's up, Nikki? Hey, Didi. Thanks for joining. What is up, Reshma? Ah, blah, blah, blah. How are you guys doing? I'm doing okay. It rained today. What the hell? Haven't seen that in a while. What's up? Okay, so I have this today as a snack. Now, it's sweet corn sticks. So we'll see. It's from what is this? Pretz? Never heard of that before. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure. Kind of skeptical. But we'll see. We'll see. Ugh. Ugh. Oh, hey. What? So it's like a stick. So it's not like a Pocky stick. I thought it was gonna be like a Pocky stick, but I guess not. Tastes kind of weird. The taste changes the more it stays in your mouth. The initial taste, tastes kind of like corn. There's some kind of like corn flavor in it. But then it turns into bread. And then salt. That's weird. I don't know if I'm a fan. That corn flavor does not do it for me. It does not. What's up, Patrick? Have I thought about making a video about the Shinigami? I have thought about it. Yeah. I'm open to it someday. I need to do some research though. Yeah, it's not Pocky, right? So it just sticks that have this corn flavor. I don't know. Not the corn picky sticks. Do you know it? Like, have you had that before? It doesn't taste that good. What's up, some noob? Hello, Dan. Canned boba is horrible. Okay. What is canned boba? Does it just come in a can? Like all sweetened? Yeah, that sounds weird. I don't like that. I have that instant boba. Like, you put it in boiling water for like 5 minutes. Yeah, I had that. That's pretty good. It tastes just like the boba they sell in the stores. I'm guessing the stores they use the same thing. Maybe, I don't know. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I actually went out for boba this week or last week. Yeah, I went out for boba last week, which was cool. Haven't done that in a while, so I feel really good. Canned boba was slimy. So canned boba, right? For if you've had it, does it taste? How does it taste? Is it squishy, or does it have like that firm consistency that they have in the stores? I'm guessing it would be super slimy, right? Like not consistent or not firm at all. I'm guessing it would be super squishy, which I'm not a fan of. Yeah, canned boba sounds weird. What's up, Speedy Dragon? Hello, hello, hello. It's already ready. It comes with a few pearls and tastes like normal. Huh. Interesting. I haven't tried it. But man, the the instant pearl is so easy, so fast to make. Maybe Maybe I don't need to try it. I'm guessing the instant boba tastes better, right? It's gotta. It's gotta. What is my favorite yokai? Probably the kitsune. I know, yeah. Yeah, probably the kitsune. They can transform, they can trick people. They're smart little buggers. Um, the tanuki is a good second. I don't know. I fluctuate back and forth. Tanuki is cool because they have gigantic balls. Man, who doesn't love gigantic balls? We all love boba here, right? What's up, Mercy? Thanks for joining. What's my favorite boba flavor? Well, I usually just get honey boba, the regular black boba. I've had green tea boba before. It's all green, and it tastes pretty good too. I'm not. Yeah. I haven't tried too many different ones. Like, what are the different boba flavors? Is there coffee? I believe there's a place that near me that does liquor flavored boba. Yeah, that may be a myth. I've heard someone say it, but I've never found it before. I've never tried it out. I don't know. Yeah, that Tanuki vid. I know. Those old artists are so creative, aren't they? Yeah. My favorite one is the one where you got a Tanuki and his ball sack is like a target for target practice. So some people were shooting arrows at his target. I like that one. There's coffee boba. Okay. That doesn't sound too bad. I haven't tried that before. There's strawberry boba. Yeah, see, I need to broaden my boba horizons. I need to go find places with different types of boba. Honestly. You go to Quickly's? 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 Quickly's is like the cheap the cheap store, right? Quickly's is like the Quickly stores around here. They're very low quality, aren't they? I don't know, maybe I'm just a snob. I'm just a boba snob. But yeah, Quickly is like at the bottom tier. They're okay, fine. If you're walking next to a Quickly's and you have a hankering for some boba, yeah, you can walk into a Quickly's and buy it. But I wouldn't seek it out. Yeah. Bacon boba? I think you're just messing with me right now. There's no such thing as bacon boba. Come on. That's disgusting. That's totally disgusting. What's up, Katie? You're not late. You're just right on time. Talking about boba. Yeah. Yeah, maybe coffee flavored boba. I'll try that. I have to look it up to see if any places around here have it. Yeah. Yeah, Quickly's is like lower tier. You guys heard of Teaspoon? Teaspoon is a good place. Yeah, it's a good chain of boba tea. What else is there? There's boba store chains. All right, let's look it up. Gong Cha is good. If you guys have Gong Cha. Bloop, 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 bloop. Let's see. All right. Oh, there's a tier list. Okay, let's look it up. Yeah. Oh, 85 degrees C bakery. That's pretty good. This guy put it at C tier, which I don't understand. 85 degrees C bakery. They have sea salt foam, which is pretty good actually. I've tried that before. Yeah, so it's milk tea with sea salt foam on the top. So you get kind of this salty flavor. Pretty good. Pretty good. 7 leaves is good too. Yeah, 7 leaves is good. Where is teaspoon on here? Ah, teaspoon is not on here. They don't have it. See, I told you, quicklies. Quicklies. It's at D tier, you guys. Yeah, it's low. It's low quality. It's low. It's at the low end. It's okay in a pinch, right? Yeah, if you really need boba and you're walking by and you see it quickly, you go you can go in and you buy it. But yeah, I wouldn't look it up. I wouldn't seek it out. Share tea is good too. Share tea and teaspoon are, I think, my favorite ones. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I don't like coffee. I don't like coffee, but I like I like coffee flavor. Like I would eat coffee Pocky sticks. I don't know. I don't like drinking coffee, but I would drink freaking well, I would try freaking coffee flavored boba. What else is there? Boba guys. I've never heard of boba guys before. Tasty. So yeah, so this person has pretty good taste. Like this person's pretty good. Yeah, I agree with the share tea and tasty. I don't know what Omomo is. I don't know what all these are. Yeah. You live in the smallest town ever and somehow you have a boba place. Do you know what it's called? Is it a chain? You go to the mom and pop places. No, some of those can be good too. Yeah. There are so many boba places around where I live. Yeah, I'm lucky because it's a big city. So you take 2 steps and you run into a boba store, which is awesome. All right. Okay. Why are we talking about boba all the time? We keep talking about boba. All right. It's gonna be a long chapter today. A long ass chapter. So let's start, okay? Let's get started. Let's do a recap. What happened last week? So our hero, Ling Hu Chong, he's fighting with Zhang Zhen from the Songshan school, which is quickly becoming my least favorite school right now in the book. So he's fighting with Zhang Zhen. And during the fight, he keeps using his energy absorbing chi powers, right? His energy absorbing technique. And he couldn't help it. He's injured and he doesn't have good control of it yet. So yeah, so as he's fighting, he keeps sucking this guy's energy. And this Zhang Zhen guy is like, he's super scared because everyone is scared of that technique. Okay, because no one wants their energy to be absorbed. Okay, so he stops the fight and then he accuses our hero Ling Hu Chong of learning this evil technique, and he leaves. Okay, and then unfortunately the master of our hero, Yue Buchun, he gets angry. He says that because Ling Hu Chong, no, he's angry because Ling Hu Chong knows this technique. That is not a technique that a good guy would use. Right? It's like an evil technique. So he gets really mad, and he says because Ling Hu Chong is injured, he wouldn't attack him, right? But next time they meet, the master will kill Ling Hu Chong. Okay, so he doesn't really like him. They're enemies now, and then he says when they meet next time, he'll kill him, which makes Ling Hu Chong sad. So, and then as that's happening, the Hangshan disciples who are also there, right? Hangshan is the school of nuns. So the Hangshan disciples receive news that their headquarters is being attacked. Okay, and they're being called back to come defend the headquarters, right? The temple. And they're really panicked, and then they ask Yue Buchun to come help. but he refuses. Okay, the master refuses, saying that it may be a trap from the demon sect, and he refuses to go. But our hero Ling Huchong, he agrees immediately to come help. Okay, so he agrees to go back to defend their temple. And so the Hangshan disciples, they're really glad that Ling Huchong is coming back to help them. They call Ling Huchong a hero, and unlike Yue Buchun, okay, so they make fun of the master, saying he's not a real hero. And mean words were exchanged. During while that was happening, a disciple of the Huashan school, Lao Denhua, he attacks one of the Hangshan disciples. And while the attack is going on, he drops a book from his clothes, right? From inside his clothes. He drops the Violet Twilight manual. And here's where one of the mysteries is revealed. So remember, a long time ago, way back, our hero was Ling Huchong was injured, and he's lying there in bed, and Monkey 6, with his best friend, was nursing him, right? And Monkey 6 was trying to he had the Violet Twilight manuscript, the Violet Twilight manual, and he's trying to get Ling Huchong to learn it to heal his wounds, right? But Ling Huchong knew that it was stolen, so he refused to learn it, right? So he decides to run away, but before he runs away, he paralyzes Monkey 6, right? Temporarily, just so he could go away, right? So it was supposed to be a temporary paralyzation, and he runs away. But then later on, when everyone comes back, they see that Monkey 6 has died. Okay? Monkey 6 had died, and the Violet Twilight manual was stolen. It was gone. Okay. Now, I think the master had always been suspicious of Ling Huchong because he thought that Ling Hu stole the manual. But now we find out that it wasn't Ling Huchong who stole the manual. It was this disciple Lao Denhua, right? And so Lao Denhua has stolen it and killed his best friend Monkey 6. So Lao Denhua runs away. Now everyone leaves. Ling Huchong leaves to go help the Hangshan disciples. And as they leave, Yue Lingshan, she rides up. She accuses Ling Huchong of stealing the evil resisting sword manual. Right, and this is the manual of Lin Pingzhi. Now, apparently, in the time that he was gone, someone had attacked the Huashan school and killed Lao Denhua and another disciple and injured Lin Pingzhi. So that's why Yue Lingshan was mad. And then mean words were exchanged, and then she left, and that's what happened. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all that happened in the last chapter. Okay. So it's gonna be a pretty long chapter today, I think. Let's get going. Oh yeah, and Yilin was there. Yilin was there. Let's see. If Yue Buchun is mad at Ling Huchong for using a different style, he just mad that Ling Huchong is a better martial artist than him. And you can't lie, Ling Huchong is a Chad. I kind of agree, Jonathan. Yeah. Yeah, the master seems, I don't know, man. The master seems kind of jealous, or like he's not making sense. He's not making sense. But then again, Ling Huchong did learn that evil technique, right? So maybe that's justified. I don't know. I think our hero is getting a bad rap here. Like, it's not fair. right, let's do this. Chapter 25, Information. The group hurried along on their horses. Every day they only slept for around 4 hours and they didn't tarry along the road. In a few days they finally arrived at Zhejiang's Dragon Spring. Although Ling Huchong lost a lot of blood after being injured by Bu Chen and Sha Tianjiang, his injuries were mostly flesh wounds. With his abundant internal energy and the Hangshan School's medicines that he had taken, he had mostly recovered by the time they arrived inside Zhejiang's border. The disciples were so anxious that they started to inquire about the location of the sword forging valley as soon as they entered Zhejiang's border. However, none of the villagers they asked knew the location of the valley. When they finally arrived in Dragon Spring, they saw numerous sabers and sword forges, but surprisingly, none of the blacksmiths knew the location of the sword forging valley. Everyone was now feeling very worried. They asked 2 nuns they met on the road, but they didn't hear about any fighting. Oh, so maybe the attack was not at their headquarters. Was not at their headquarters, but somewhere else, because apparently they can't find the way to it. But anyways, we know that the main school, the main Hangshan school, is being attacked right now. So they're trying to go there to help. All the blacksmiths they asked also didn't hear about any fighting. As for nuns, the blacksmiths said that they frequently saw nuns around and there was a water moon temple near the east wall of the city. The disciples asked for the location of the water moon temple before rushing there on horseback. But when they arrived, they saw the temple's main door tightly shut. Zheng E went up to knock on the door, but no one answered, even after a long time. Yihe saw Zheng E knock on the door again, but they still didn't hear any sounds coming from the inside. She couldn't bear to wait anymore, so she pulled her sword out and jumped over the wall to go inside. Yiqing also followed her in jumping over the wall. "Look at it. What's this?" Yihe said as she pointed to the ground. They saw on the courtyard around 7 to 8 bright pieces of sword points. It looked like they had been cut off. "Anyone inside the temple?" Yihe shouted while going inside the hall. At the same time, Yiqing opened the main door to let Ling Huchong and the other disciples come. Yiqing then picked up a piece of broken sword point and gave it to Ling Huchong. "Martial brother Ling Hu, there was some fighting here." Ling Huchong examined the broken piece and saw that the break was very smooth. He asked, "Do Martial Uncle Jingqian and Ding Yi use some kind of treasured swords?" "They don't use any treasured swords. My master once said we must practice our sword art till we're very good at it, and then we would be able to win even if we're using a wooden sword or a bamboo sword. She also said that treasured sabers and treasured swords are too overbearing. If our hands were to slip slightly, then we might take someone's life or disable a person's limbs," answered Yiqing. Ling Huchong hummed and said, "Then these swords were not broken by martial uncles?" Yiqing nodded her head. Then they heard Yihe shouted from behind the main hall, "There are also broken swords here." Everyone then went towards the back courtyard through the main hall. When they got inside the hall, they saw that the tables and everything in the hall were thick with dust. In all the temples in the world, there were always people to sweep the halls and keep it clean. So judging from the amount of dust collected in the hall, it seemed the temple had been uninhabited for several days already. Tarry? Tarry means like to wait. Or to wait or delay or go slowly. They didn't tarry along the road. Yeah. Tarry. To cover with tar. That's obviously the wrong definition. Yep, here. Tarry. To delay or to be tardy in acting or doing. Yeah. In the back courtyard, Ling Huchong and the rest of the disciples saw several trees hacked by weapons. They examined the places where the trees had been hacked and realized that they were at least a few days old. There was a hole where the back door was, and the door planks were tens of feet away. It looked as if the door had been kicked open. Outside was a small path leading to the mountains. They followed the path, and after more than 100 feet, the road branched into two. Yi Jing called out, "Everyone, separate and look around. See if there's anything unusual." Not long after, Jin Juan shouted from the right branch, "There's a projectile here." And another one also called out, "Iron awl! There's an iron awl here." They saw this branch of the road pass through a mountain range that went up and down. Everyone quickly rushed towards that small road. Along the road, they often saw projectiles and broken pieces of sabers and swords lying around. Suddenly, Yi Jing uttered an "ah" and picked up a longsword from the bushes. She said to Ling Huchong, "It's our school's sword." Ling Huchong reasoned out loud. Ding Qian and Ding Yi Shu Tai must have fought here. They must have come towards this direction. Everyone knew that the abbess and Ding Yi Shu Tai had fled towards this direction because they could not handle the enemies. What Ling Huchong said was only to make things sound better. They saw a lot of weapons scattered about on the road and guessed that the fighting must have been fierce here. They had received the urgent call for help many days ago. They did not know whether there was still time to rescue them. Everyone was worried as they hurriedly went forward. As they climbed further up, the road became more rugged as it circled around the mountain. Amongst the Hangshan School's disciples here, Yilin and Qin Chuan had the lowest martial arts, and they fell behind as they kept going. After several li, the road became rocky, and there was no more road to follow, and also no more weapons to give them some direction. So they stopped paying attention to the road. Suddenly, they saw thick smoke rising from the back of the mountain on their left. Ling Huchong said, "Let's go there to have a look." And they rushed towards the smoke. They saw the thick smoke getting higher and higher as they got nearer. Finally, they rounded a hillside and saw a big valley. In the middle of the valley, there was a big fire roaring up into the sky. The burning woods and leaves crackled loudly. Ling Huchong hid himself behind a rock and then turned around and waved his hand, telling the others not to make any sound. Just then, they heard an old person shout, "Ding Xian, Ding Yi, today I'll send you both into the Buddhist paradise to confirm your spiritual progress in Buddhism." Wait, he's old? So let's do an old voice. "You don't even need to thank us." Ling Huchong felt happy hearing this. "The two Shutai are still alive. Lucky we didn't arrive too late." Another male joined in. "Chief Dongfang sincerely advised you to surrender, but you persistently don't want to listen. From today, there wouldn't be a Hangshan school anymore." That should be, "There won't be a Hangshan school." The previous person shouted, "You mustn't blame our divine sun moon sect for being cruel and merciless. You should blame yourself for being obstinate and getting those young disciples killed in vain. What a pity." They now saw the fire in the middle of the valley was getting larger as it burned. They knew that Ding Xian and Ding Yi Shitai were surrounded by the fire. Ling Huchong grasped his sword and drew a breath before shouting loudly, "Fearless devil sect thief! You dare to give trouble to Hangshan School's Shutai? 5 mountain sword schools' masters have come from everywhere to help. Thieves, you're not still surrendering?" His shout was heard everywhere in the valley. At the valley, the firewood, stacked 20 to 30 feet high, was blocking the road. Ling Huchong didn't think deeply before he jumped inside the fire. Fortunately, the firewood in the middle wasn't burning that much. He went forward a few steps and saw 2 stone ovens, but there was no one around. He shouted, "Ding Xian Shutai! Ding Yi Shutai! Hangshan School's force has arrived to help." At this time, Yihe, Yiqing, Yu Sao, and the rest of the disciples were outside the fire, shouting, "Master, martial uncle, disciples have arrived." This was following This was followed by the enemies shouting, "Kill them all! They're Hangshan School's nuns! They're bluffing! There's no Five Mountains Sword School's masters!" This was followed by the clashing of swords between the enemy and the Hangshan School disciples. Ling Huchong saw a tall shadow of a person coming out of the stone oven. Her whole body was covered with blood. It was Ding Yi Shi Tai. Her hand was holding a sword, and she stopped at the entrance of the stone oven. If you remember, we met Ding Yi Shi Tai before, right at the very beginning. She seemed like a good person. Yeah, at the very, very beginning. Yeah, she was the one who wanted to save that one person's family, Liu Chengfeng's family. But the masters of the other schools didn't really want to save them. But yeah. Her hand was holding a sword and she stopped at the entrance of the stone oven. Even though her gown was ragged and her face was caked with dirt and blood, she still stood there, looking proud and powerful. She had not lost the aura of a master at all. When she saw Ling Huchong, she was greatly startled. You are... Ling Huchong bowed. "Disciple Ling Huchong." Ding Yi Shi Tai said, "I know you are Ling Huchong." She had seen this face before through the window from the outside of the Jade House brothel. "Disciple will open the way. We'll fight our way out," said Ling Huchong as he stooped down to pick up a branch for swatting away the burning woods. Ding Yi Shi Tai said, "You already joined the devil sect," she said till here when they heard something. She said till here when they heard someone shouted, "Who has come to disturb us?" The saber was lightning fast as it chopped down. Ling Huchong saw that the fire was getting more intense and the situation was desperate. But Ding Yi Shi Tai was being suspicious towards him and unexpectedly didn't want to rush out with him. In this situation, he had to move fast and kill as many enemies as possible. Only then would he be able to save them out of danger. So she thinks he's an enemy because, remember, his master put out sent a letter to everyone saying, "Oh, he's a bad dude. All right. When you see him, you should kill him." He took a step back to avoid the saber, chopping down, and that person followed his first move with a second slash. Ling Huchong countered this move by cutting off his arm holding the saber. Then he heard a female disciple shouting sharply in misery from the outside. It was a Hangshan School's disciple who had met with disaster. Ling Huchong was startled and hurriedly jumped out of the fire. He saw a group of people on the east hillside and another group on the west hillside. The enemy had more than 100 people with them. Some of the Hangshan School disciples were already in groups of 7, using the sword formation to fight the enemies, but there were still some disciples who were fighting alone, as they didn't have time to form the formation. Even though those who were fighting in formation didn't have the upper hand, they were still able to hold their own. But the situation was extremely dangerous for those who were fighting alone. 2 female disciples had already been killed. Ling Huchong swept his eyes across the battlefield to assess the situation. He then saw Yilin and Qin Chuan fighting back to back against 3 men. He gathered his chi and rushed towards them when he suddenly saw a bright light moving towards him. A long sword was being thrust towards him, but Ling Huchong promptly killed him by piercing his throat. He leapt a few times and arrived in front of Yilin. He pierced the back of one man, killing him. He killed the second man by piercing the side of his body. The third person lifted his steel whip to smash it down towards Qin Chuan's head, but Ling Huchong reversed his sword and slashed upwards, cutting off that person's arm at the shoulder. Yilin was looking pale, but now there was a slight smile on her face. "Amito Fu, Big Brother Ling Hu." Ling Huchong now saw that Yu Sao was being attacked by 2 good fighters. He rushed towards her and slashed twice. The first slash hit the person on his lower abdomen, killing him. The second slash cut off the person's right wrist. He turned around and rushed towards Yi He and Yi Qing, who were fighting against 3 men. Ling Huchang wielded his swords, and the 3 men cried out miserably before they dropped dead to the ground. Suddenly, he heard an elder shouted, "Join forces and kill this servant first." 3 gray shadows responded to his call, and 3 swords were thrust towards his throat, chest, and lower abdomen. These 3 sword moves were really wonderful, and their positioning was masterful. These were first-class sword arts. Ling Huchang was startled. This is Songshan School's sword art. Could it be that they are from the Songshan School? As Ling Huchang thought of this, the 3 swords were closing in on his 3 fatal points. Ling Huchang used the sword-breaking stance from the Dugu 9 swords as he circled his sword towards the 3 attacking swords to neutralize them. His sword intention had not finished yet as he forced the enemy to retreat a couple of steps. He saw that the enemy on his left was a fat-looking Han Chinese around 40 years old with a short beard on his face. The one in the middle was a thin old man with dark skin and bright-looking eyes. He didn't have the time to look at the third person clearly before he slanted his body and escaped. With 2 thrusts, he killed the 2 people attacking Zhang E. The previous 3 people roared out and chased him. Ling Huchang had already made a decision. These 3 people's martial arts are high, and I probably won't be able to finish the fight quickly. If I fight too long with them, a lot of disciples from the Hangshan school would be injured. He gathered his chi and started running non-stop to the east and west, thrusting here and there. His sword was everywhere. With each thrust, an enemy either fell down to the ground or was killed. Those 3 masters were still chasing him, but the distance between them stayed around 10 feet, as they weren't able to close in on him. In the time to drink a pot of tea, 30 people had been injured by Ling Huchang's sword. They were being routed, as not a single person was able to stop a single move from him. As 30 of the enemies were injured in such a short time, the situation was now reversed. For every enemy that Ling Huchang killed, he slowly managed to free some Hangshan School disciples from the fighting, enabling them to go help the others. In the beginning, the Hangshan School was outnumbered greatly, but now they were gradually turning the situation around, and they were getting the upper hand. Ling Huchang knew that this fighting today was very dangerous for everyone. He decided that he couldn't spare anyone. If he didn't manage to push the enemy back in a short time, then the fire would get even bigger, and Ding Qian, Shi Tai, and everyone else inside the stone oven would be unable to escape. It was as if he was flying. He was sometimes rushing forward and sometimes rushing at an angle. All the enemies within 10 feet of him had no way of escaping. Not long after, another 20 enemies had dropped to the ground. Damn, he's like Superman now. I thought he was injured. I guess that medicine was really good. Ding Yi was surveying the battle scene, standing on top of the stone oven. She saw Ling Huchang appearing and disappearing like a demon, killing those enemies. His sword art was wonderfully skillful, and she had never seen it before. She felt really happy and astonished at the same time. There were around 40 to 50 enemies left, and they had seen Ling Huchang rampaging like a demon, with no one able to resist him. Suddenly, someone sent out a cry, and around 20 people escaped into the surrounding grove. After Ling Huchang had killed several more people, the remaining enemies lost their will to fight. Before long, all the enemies who were able had escaped. Okay, so he basically single-handedly saved everyone. Only those 3 masters still remained as they chased after him, but the distance between them was gradually getting farther. It seemed that they were also afraid of him. Ling Huchang stopped suddenly and turned around. He shouted, "You're from the Songshan school, aren't you?" Those 3 quickly jumped back. A tall Han Chinese shouted, "Sir, who are you?" Ling Huchang didn't answer him, but called out to Yu Sao and the other disciples, "Quickly, open up a way to save your master, martial uncle, and the others." The female disciples cut some tree branches and started to beat on the burning firewood, while Yihe and a few other disciples jumped inside the fire. The dry branches were already burnt through to the core, but they weren't able to extinguish the fire. But everyone worked together to beat on the firewood, and before long a gap had been opened up. Yihe and the others quickly helped the suffocated nuns get out from inside of the stone oven. Oh, so apparently this was not the demon sect attacking the Hangshan school. This is the Songshan school. Okay. Remember, the Songshan school wants to merge all the schools, right? Wants to merge the 5 schools into one. And the Hangshan school refused. Okay, they refused. So maybe this is why they attacked. He's the chosen one? Okay. Oh, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm glad you could join. So. See ya. The female disciple. How's Ding Xian's Shutai? Ling Huchong asked. He heard an elderly female voice answered, "Thank you for your concern," as a nun of medium stature slowly walked out of the ring of fire. Her white gown wasn't stained at all with blood or dirt. There was no weapon on her right hand. In her left hand, instead of a weapon, she held a strand of Buddhist prayer beads. Her appearance was kindly, with her spirit calm, and her aura leisurely. Ling Huchong was surprised. Dingxian Shutai is so serene. Even after all the difficulties she went through, she still managed to keep her calm countenance. She really lives up to her reputation. He approached and bowed to her. Ling Huchong pays his respect to Shutai. Dingxian Shutai returned his propriety, but warned, "Someone's attacking. Be careful." So Dingxian is the leader of the Hangshan school, I think. "Yes," Ling Huchong calmly answered. Without turning his body, he reversed his sword and slashed it backwards, blocking that fat Han Chinese's sword, and said, "Disciple was late in coming to help. Shutai, please forgive this sin." He blocked a few more thrusts from that fat Han Chinese when 2 more swords were thrust at his back. At this time, more than 10 nuns came out of the fire ring, carrying their martial sisters as corpses. Dingyi Shutai took large strides to emerge from the fire while saying fiercely, "Shameless traitor! That wolf's wild schemes!" The bottom of her gown had caught on fire, but she didn't care about it at all. Yusa went to her to beat on the gown and extinguish the fire. So Ding Yi Shutai has a famous temper, right? Ling Huchong exclaimed, "Both Shutai are well. This is a joyous occasion." Just then, the sound of chi chi could be heard behind his body as 3 long swords were thrust simultaneously at him. At this time, Ling Huchong's sword art was not only one of the best, but also not many in this world would match his internal energy strength. Not only did he hear the edge of the swords splitting the air, his internal energy also felt it, and he automatically knew the enemy's sword paths. He wielded his long sword and countered the enemy's strikes, but those three people's martial arts were very high, and their movements were lightning fast, which enabled them to escape from Ling Huchong's thrust. But the back of the tall Han Chinese's hand was still slashed, and fresh blood started to flow. Ling Huchong questioned, "Shutai, Songshan School is the leader of the 5 mountain sword schools. Also, they have brotherly ties with the Hangshan School. Why would they suddenly attack your school? I don't understand a single thing." "Where's Marshall's sister? How come she didn't come?" Dingyi Shutai asked. Qinchuan cried as she answered, Master was besieged by evildoers. She fought vigorously until she perished." Dingyi Shutai was grieved and indignant as she scolded, "Good thieves!" and started to take large strides forward. But after only a few steps, she started to sway, and she had to sit down on the ground heavily and threw up some blood from her mouth. Even though the 3 Songshan schools' masters were cooperating to fight Ling Huchong, they were still unable to endure his attack. Throughout the fight, they had only been looking at the back of his body, while Ling Huchong was fighting with the longsword reversed in his hand. He's fighting them backwards. His sword art was marvelous and unpredictable. If he actually had turned around to fight them, they would not be his match at all. The three people were secretly feeling miserable, and they were thinking of running away. Suddenly, Ling Huchong turned around and started to attack them. He attacked the enemy on the left from the left, and the enemy on the right from the right, forcing them to crowd together. His one sword was able to encircle them, and after 18 moves, they were unable to return another move. All three people were using Songshan School's wonderful sword art, but under the unceasing attack of the Dugu 9 swords, they were unable to return another move. Ling Huchong actually forced them to use their own school's sword art so they wouldn't be able to deny their association any further. He saw that even though sweat was flowing down on their faces, their expressions were still fearsome and their sword arts were still executed properly. It seemed that each of them had at least practiced their sword art for at least 10 years. It was really amazing. Ami To Fo, Martial Brother Zhao, Martial Brother Zhang, Martial Brother Xima, my Hangshan school and your respectable school has no enmity with each other. Why did the three of you attack us and wanted to burn us to death? Poor Nun doesn't understand and would like to consult with you, Dingxian Xuetai said. Those three Songshan school masters really did have the surnames of Zhao, Zhang, and Xima. The three of them were rarely traveled in Jianghu, and their positions in the school were a secret. Ling Huchong had already given them so much trouble, and now suddenly Dingxian Xuetai called their surnames out. They were startled. Qianglang, Qianglang. That's a sound effect, by the way. Two of them were hit on the wrists and dropped their swords. I think that's the sound of swords dropping on the ground, like clink, 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 clink. Ling Huchong pointed his sword at the short person's throat and commanded, "Drop the sword." That old short person sighed and exclaimed, "The world unexpectedly has this kind of martial art, this kind of sword art. Zhao has been defeated by your sword, and I wouldn't regard it as injustice." After saying this, he gathered his qi, cast it into his hand, and broke his sword into 7 or 8 pieces. Ling Huchong moved back a few steps, and Yihe with 6 other disciples drew their long swords and surrounded these 3 people. Dingxian Xuetai slowly said, "Your respectable school wishes to combine the 5 mountains sword schools into one and create the 5 mountains school. Hangshan school has been around for several hundred years. Poor Nun doesn't dare to end the school at my hand, so I refused your school's proposal. We've already exhausted the discussion on this matter already, but now you disguise yourself as the Devil Sect and try to wipe out my Hangshan school? Isn't this method too high-handed?" Dingye Xuetai indignantly butted in. "Why is Martial's sister saying so much to them? Just kill them, so they won't give us any more trouble in the future." She then coughed a few times and vomited blood again at the same time. That tall person surnamed Xima said, "We were just following an order to dispatch a message. We didn't know any details at all." "Let them kill us or peel our skins off. Why do you need to talk to them?" that old man Zhao indignantly chided. Xima shut his mouth and stopped talking after being scolded. He looked ashamed. Dingxian Xuetai said, 30 years ago, the 3 of you were running amok in Hebei, but suddenly you just disappeared without a trace. Poor Nun thought that the 3 of you had turned away from your unruly ways, but I didn't expect that you would join and conspire with the Songshan school. The Songshan school's leader, Zhuo, is a respected person of our generation, but he has accepted many unorthodox Jianghu's unusual warriors, and together with them cause problems. This is really harboring evil. I don't understand this. Although she had changed her mind at this time, she still didn't want to offend anyone with her speech. She felt that she might have spoken too much, and immediately stopped talking. She sighed. My martial sister, Ding Jing Shi Tai, was she harmed by your respectable school as well? That cowardly person with the surname Sima wanted to make up for before, so he said in a loud voice, Right, that's martial brother Zhang. Hey, rebuked that old person surnamed Zhao as he indignantly stared at him. The person surnamed Sima realized that he had said the wrong thing, but he still continued. Now that it has come to this, what's there to hide anymore? Leader Zhuo divided our forces into two. Each force came to Zhujian to handle the matter. Amitofu, Amitofu. Leader Zhuo is already the head of the Five Mountains sword schools. What higher honor does he want by joining the five schools and becoming its leader? So he wages a war and destroys our alliance. Wouldn't the Jianghu heroes laugh at this? Asked Dingxian Xuetai. Dingyi Xuetai fiercely said, Martial sister, this thief's wild scheme is insatiably greedy. You... Dingxian Xuetai waved her hand and then said to those three people, The net of heaven stretches everywhere. They might be loose, but they never miss. You will suffer retribution for these unrighteous conducts. Get out of here. I'd bother the three of you to tell Leader Zhou that from now on, Hangshan School will no longer receive his order. Although my humble school only has weak females, we would not yield under this violence. We won't follow Leader Zhuo's order to combine the schools. Yihu called out, Martial uncle, they're very malicious. Withdraw the sword formation, ordered Dingxian Xuetai. Yes, replied Yihu. Complying with the order, she lifted her sword, which was followed by the other 6 disciples. They then retreated several steps. Those 3 masters from the Songshan school never expected that they would be released so easily. They couldn't help but feel appreciative as they bowed towards Dingxian Xuetai. They then turned around and flew off. When they were tens of feet away, that old man Zhao stopped and turned around. He asked in a clear voice, May I ask the young hero with the godly sword art for your honorable surname and given name? I was defeated today, though I don't dare to hope to take revenge, but I would like to learn the name of the great hero who taught you and the name of this sword art. Ling Huchong laughed. This general is from Quanzhou Prefecture. I'm called General Wu Jiande. Let's exchange names. That old person knew that Ling Huchong's answer was fake, so he sighed and turned around to go. At this time, the fire had gotten larger. There were many dead people from the Songshan school lying on the ground. More than 10 of the Songshan people who were lightly injured had slowly crawled out of the valley, while those who were heavily injured were lying in pools of blood. They saw the fire was getting closer, but they were too powerless to move away. Some of them shouted for help. Dingxian Xuetai said, They didn't do this on their own accord. It was Leader Zhuo who ordered them to come here because of an error in his thought. Yu Xiao, Yi Qing, help them. They knew that their abbess was a merciful person, and they didn't dare to disobey her. They separately started to check on the injured Songshan school people. Those who were still breathing were helped to the side and given some medicine. The abbess is kind of too nice here, I think, you guys. Dingxian Xuetai looked towards the south, and there were teardrops falling down her cheeks. She cried out, Martial sister! She then swayed a few times and fell forward. Everyone was startled and quickly rushed to her side to support her. They saw fresh blood flowing down from the side of her mouth. It seemed that her injuries were just as serious as Dingyi Xuetai. The disciples were all frightened and didn't know what to do. They all turned around and looked at Ling Huchong, waiting to hear his idea. Ling Huchong instructed, Quickly, give the 2 Xuetai medicines for their wounds. For the injured, wrap their wounds first to stop the bleeding. The fire is still going strong in this place. Everybody, let's go there to rest. Can I ask a few martial sisters to go and look for some fruits to eat? The disciples responded to his order and separately did the tasks. Zheng He and Qin Chuan attended to Dingxian Xuetai, Dingyi Xuetai, and the injured disciples. They got some water from the creek with a kettle for them to drink with the medicine. During the Dragon Spring fight, 37 of the Hangshan school disciples died. When the disciples thought of how Ding Jing Xutai and the other disciples had died, their hearts were full of grief. Oh, thanks, Nikki. Yeah, let's take a break. I've been reading for a while. I got a little bit too into it. All right. Let's take a 5-minute break. Hey, Shamshir. Well, you love the content? Thanks so much. I'm glad you like it. All right, give me 5 minutes, okay? 5-minute break. I'll be right back. Bye, back. So, some shit happened. So it turns out the Songshan school was attacking the Hangshan school. Okay, and it wasn't the Devil's Sect. Looks like they're going around eliminating anyone who don't want to merge the schools, right? So anyone who refuses anyone who refuses to merge the schools, the Songshan school is going after them. It seems. And now it looks like the Dingjing Shutai, looks like a Dingxian Shutai and Dingyi Shutai. They're both seriously injured. Suddenly, a few people started to cry, and this affected the rest of the disciples. They all started to cry. All of a sudden, the valley was filled with cries of sorrow. Ding Yishutai fiercely scolded. The dead are dead already. Why do you take this so hard? You have all read the Buddhist sutras and comprehend this matter of life and death. What's so good about this smelly sack of leather? The disciples knew that Ding Yishutai's nature was like a raging fire, but no one dared to go against her wish. In a short time, the weeping sounds ceased, but many of them were still sobbing. Ding Yishutai continued, How did Martial's sister finally meet her end? Why don't you report to Abbess and tell us clearly what happened? Yes, answered Zheng E. She stood up and started to narrate how they were ambushed in the Xiangxia mountain range, how Ling Huchong helped them, how they were captured in Nianbapu town with the use of confusion poison, how Dingjing Shutai was threatened by Songshan School's Zhongjun and then besieged by masked men, how Ling Huchong luckily caught up and drove them away, and how Dingjing Shutai finally succumbed to her heavy injuries. She narrated everything to them. Oh, she gave us a little summary. Thank you, Zheng E. Dingyi Shutai uttered, That's how it is. Songshan School's thieves were pretending to be the Devil's Sect to compel Martial's sister to agree to the merger. How vicious. If you all had been captured by Songshan School and Martial's sister didn't agree, then it could have been disastrous. As she said this, she ran out of breath and her voice became weak. After taking another breather, she continued, When Martial's sister was besieged on the Xiangxia mountain range, she knew that the enemies weren't easy to handle. So she dispatched the pigeons, asking us for help. Unexpectedly, this matter was already anticipated by the enemies. Dingxian Shutai's second disciple, Yu Wen, said, Martial uncle, please rest. Disciple would narrate how our group met with the enemies. Dingxian Shutai's second disciple, Ding Yi Shutai indignantly retorted, What's there to tell? Water Moon Temple was attacked by the enemy at night, and we've been fighting continuously till today. Yi Wen said, Yes. It was just a simple narration of how they had been fighting with the enemies for many days. That night, Songshan School raided the temple with wearing masks and pretending to be the Devil's Sect. The attack on Hangshan School that time was so swift that the nuns were worried of being annihilated. Luckily, Water Moon Temple was an artery of Wulin, and it stored 5 treasured swords from the Dragon Spring. In that critical situation, Abbess Qing Xiao distributed the treasured swords to Dingxian and Dingyi Shutai to fight the enemies. Dragon Springs' treasured swords were able to cut through iron as if it were mud. They used the treasured swords to cut many weapons and injured many enemies. They retreated as they fought until they reached this valley. Qingxiao Shutai died in protecting them. This valley used to produce fine iron, and several hundred years ago, metals were cast here. Later, the iron ran out and the sword forges were moved somewhere else. The only remaining things in this valley were a few stone ovens for smelting. It was lucky that those stone ovens were around, as it enabled the Hongshan school to fight with the ovens at their back. By doing this, they were able to hold out for many days and averted a big disaster. When the Songshan school was unable to break through with their attack, they collected firewood and tried to use fire to burn them. If Ling Huchong and the other disciples had arrived half a day late, it would have been very difficult to save them. Ding Ye Shutai was impatient to get to the end of Yi Wen's narration of the events of the past few days. She stared at Ling Huchong and suddenly said, You are good. Why did your master expel you from his school? He said that you were colluding with the devil sect. Ling Huchong answered, Disciple wasn't careful while traveling and became acquainted with a few devil sect people. Ding Ye Shutai uttered an before saying, Songshan school is even more ambitious and vicious compared to what the devil sect is capable of. People from the orthodox schools better than those from the devil sect? Yihu said, Martial Brother Ling Hu, I wouldn't dare to judge whether your master was right or wrong, but he knew clearly that my school was facing a difficulty, but he just put his hand in his sleeve and would rather be a spectator. Given this, maybe he already approved of the Songshan school's plan of combining the schools together. Ling Huchong's heart was moved, and he thought that what Yihu said was not unreasonable. But he had grown up under his respected master and had always looked up to him. So he didn't dare to have any disrespectful thought towards his master. He said, My respected master wasn't putting his hand in his sleeve and acting as a spectator. It's most likely that he has another matter from this. Up until now, Dingxian Shutai had her eyes closed to meditate. Now she slowly opened her eyes and said, My humble school has met with a few big difficulties, and young hero Ling Hu has helped us get through them. This virtue and kindness. Ling Huchong hastily said, I didn't do much. Martial Uncle's words flatter me too much. I don't deserve it. Dingxian Shutai shook her head and said, Why must young hero be so modest? Martial Brother Yue is unable to come himself, so he sent his eldest disciple to represent him. That's just the same. Yihe, don't talk nonsense, and be rude to your elders. Yihe bowed. Yes, the disciple doesn't dare, but Martial Brother Ling Hu has already been expelled from the Huashan school. Martial Uncle Yue doesn't want him anymore, so he didn't really come here to represent Martial Uncle Yue's school. Dingxian Shutai smiled slightly. You still don't want to give in and want to keep debating it. Yihe sighed. It would be good if only Martial Brother Ling Hu were a female. What? Why? Asked Dingxian Shutai. He's already been expelled from the Huashan school and couldn't go back there again. If he were a girl, then he could join our school. We've shared a lot of trials and tribulations together. He's already like our own people, answered Yihe. Ding Ye Shutai shouted, Nonsense! You're grown up already, but you're still speaking like a child. Dingxian Shutai smiled slightly. Martial Brother Yue must have misunderstood something. Later in the future, he will see clearly and would accept young hero Ling Hu back into his school. When the news of Songshan School's plot spreads, he would not be able to just sit back any longer, given the situation. Then the Huashan School would need young hero Ling Hu to rely on. Also, if he couldn't go back to Huashan with his martial art, he could just establish his own school, and no one would blame him. Zhang Ge said, What Martial Uncle said is true. Martial Brother Ling Hu, Huashan School people treated you so badly. Why don't you just establish a Ling Hu school and show it to them? Then why do you still have to return to Huashan school? Ling Huchong smiled bitterly and said, Martial uncle speaks so highly of me. Disciple is not worthy of your praise. If only my respected master would forgive my faults in the future and permit me to re-enter the school, then I won't have anything more to ask from him. Nothing more to ask from him? How about your little martial sister? Zheng asked. She wants him to be a nun. She does. What if he becomes a monk? What if he just shaves his head and becomes a monk? Ling Huchong shook his head and changed the topic. Shall we bury the remains of martial sisters, or cremate them and take the ashes back to Hangshan? Lingshan Chutai answered, Cremate them. And her voice started to choke as she saw the dead bodies of her disciples lying on the ground. Even though she completely understood the human affairs, they had been her disciples for many years, and she couldn't help but feel sad. A few of the disciples started crying again on hearing this. Oh, you guys agree that he should start his own school? Wouldn't that be funny? He starts his own school and it becomes bigger than the Huashan school. What now, master? Huh? What now? Some of the disciples had been dead for several days already, and some were hundreds of feet away. While the disciples were moving the bodies, they all kept scolding Songshan School's leader, Zuo Longqian, for having sinister intentions and methods. After they had finished cremating their martial sisters' bodies, the sky had turned dark, so they stayed the night with the wild mountain under the stars. So they stayed the night in the wild mountain under the stars. At dawn, the disciples carried Ding Yu Shutai, and their injured martial sisters on their backs. When they arrived at the Dragon Spring town, they went to the harbor and hired 7 black boats to travel to the north. Ling Huchong was still afraid that Songshan School might attack them while traveling on water, so he followed them north. Now that there were 2 elders traveling with the Hangshan School's party, Ling Huchong controlled himself and didn't dare to talk nonsense to the female disciples anymore. Ling Xian Shutai, Ling Yu Shutai, and the injured disciples is injured. This translation. And the disciples' injuries were not light, but luckily Hangshan School's medicines were very effective. By the time they had passed Qiantang River, their injuries were not life-threatening anymore. As many of the Hangshan School disciples were injured, they didn't want to encounter any incidents on the road, and also wanted to avoid meeting anyone from Jianghu. When they reached the Yangtze River, they hired different boats to go upstream towards the Jiangxi province. They traveled slowly in this manner. When they arrived at Hangzhou, about 6 or 7 out of 10 of the injured had already recovered. So they went back on the road and continued going north towards Hangshan. On the day they arrived at the bank of Poyang Lake, there were several boats anchored at the mouth of the Nine River. Is it Nine River? It's not like Nine. Mouth of the Nine River. These river boats were really big, and all of them were able to fit into 2 boats. At midnight, Ling Huchong was sleeping at the stern of the boat with the sailors when he suddenly heard light clapping from the bank of the river. They clapped 3 times, stopped for a moment, then clapped for another 3 times. This was followed by clapping from a boat west of them. A person on that boat clapped 3 times, stopped for a moment, then clapped for another 3 times. The sound of the clapping was very light, but Ling Huchong still managed to hear it, as his abundant internal energy made his hearing superb. He immediately woke up upon hearing these unusual sounds, as he knew that these were signals of the Jianghu's people greeting each other. For the last few days, he had been watching attentively for unusual signs to protect against any surprise attack. He thought, no harm in having a look. If it's unrelated to the Hangshan School, then it's good. Otherwise, I'll just take care of it in secret. There's no need to bother Ding Xian Shutai and the rest of them. He squinted his eyes to look at the boat at the west and saw a black shadow with average Qinggong jumping for around 10 feet repeatedly till he reached the shore. Ling Hucheng lightly flew off and landed on the shore noiselessly. He then went around the back of a row of big baskets filled with oil on the east side. As he hid himself behind the baskets, he heard a person say, "Those nuns on the boat must be from the Hangshan school." The other person said, "What should we do?" Ling Hucheng slowly got nearer, and the glimmering light from the stars and moon allowed him to see the faces of the two people. One of them had a face full of beard, while the other one had a long and pointed face, which was not only oval, but was also like an open sunflower seed face. He then heard that Han Chinese with the pointed face say, "White Flood Dragon Clan is the only one doing this. Although we have a lot of people, our martial art isn't higher than the other people, so we shouldn't trade blows with them." "Who said we're going to trade blows? These nuns' martial art might be good, but on water, their water skill might not be that good. Tomorrow we'll get a boat to go over to their boat. Then we'll go underwater to bore some holes in their boats. Then we'll just capture them one by one," that bearded person said. That pointed face Han Chinese happily said, This plan is very clever. We two brothers would have done a great service for the 9 Rivers White Flood Dragon Clan. From now on, our names would be heard throughout Jianghu. But I'm still worried about one thing." "What are you worried about?" asked the bearded person. "They're in the 5 Mountains Sword Schools Alliance. They have a saying, same root, different branches. If Mr. Mo Da found out about this, he wouldn't let the White Flood Dragon Clan get away with it," replied the pointed face. For the past several years, we've always endured with the Hangshan School's influence. Enough already. This time, if we don't do this thing..." Now, this Hangshan, remember, there are 2 Hangshan schools, and they have the same name, unfortunately. So this Hangshan school he's talking about is a different one, right? It's the one that belongs to Mr. Mo Da, who we met like a long time ago. "Enough already. This time, if we don't do this thing for our friend and with all our hearts, then if we met with a problem in the future, they won't help us. When we're done with this, maybe Hangshan School would be annihilated. Why are you still afraid of Mr. Mo Da for?" said the bearded face. "All right, that's the plan then. Let's look for some help. Who can swim well?" said the pointed face, agreeing to the plan. Ling Hucheng leapt out and used his sword handle to hit the pointed face at the back of his head, knocking him out. That bearded face person threw a punch, but Ling Hucheng extended his sword handle and hit his left Taiyang acupoint, which made him spin around a few times like a screw before plunking down heavily on the ground. Ling Hucheng extended his long sword across to open the lids of the 2 oil baskets. He picked those 2 people up and separately squeezed them into the baskets. The baskets were filled with vegetable oil and each weighed around 300 caddies. They were actually for that day's shipments. As the 2 people were dunked into the basket, their whole bodies were immersed in oil, and oil entered their nose and mouth. Oh God. This is terrible. The cold oil woke them up immediately and made them gasp for air, but they only managed to swallow some oil instead. Suddenly, someone at Ling Hucheng's back said, "Young hero Ling Hu, don't kill them." Oh wait. "Young hero Ling Hu, don't kill them." It was Dingxian Shutai's voice. Ling Hucheng was slightly alarmed. When did Dingxian Shutai get behind me? I wasn't aware of it. He quickly took both of his hands off their heads and replied, "Yes." As soon as their heads were released, they wanted to jump out of the basket, but Ling Hucheng hit the top of their heads, forcing them back in, and laughingly commanded, "Don't move." Those 2 people had their knees bent to crouch inside, while the oil reached up to their necks, and they were having trouble opening their eyes. They were entirely confused about how they had gotten into such a difficult circumstances. Then they saw another gray shadow leapt from the boat towards the bank. It was Ding Yu Shutai, and she asked, "Martial sister, did you catch some thieves?" "They're the hall leaders of the 9 Rivers' White Flood Dragon Clan. Young hero Ling Hu is playing a joke with them," replied Ding Xian Shutai. She then turned her head towards the bearded-faced person and asked, "Sir, is your surname Yi or Chi? Is clan leader well?" That bearded person's surname really was Yi, and he asked, My surname is Yi. How did you know? Our clan leader is well." Ding Xian smiled. "White Flood Dragon Clan's hall leader Yi and hall leader Qi are famously known in Jianghu as Yangtze River's pair of flying fish. Old Nun has heard of your names. They're like thunder entering the ears." So, like thunder entering the ears is an idiom that means have long resounded in my ears. Ding Xian Shutai was very meticulous. Although she rarely went out of the temple, she kept detailed knowledge of all of the personalities from every school and every sect. Otherwise, how could she have recognized those 3 masters from the Songshan school previously? The bearded person surnamed Yi and the pointed-faced person surnamed Qi were 3rd or 4th class personalities in Wulin, but as soon as she saw their countenances, she was able to guess their backgrounds correctly. That pointed-faced Han Chinese felt proud of himself that Ding Xian Shutai had recognized him and said, "Like thunder entering the ears, I wouldn't dare." Ling Huchong used his sword to press the top of the pointed face's head, forcing him to submerge in the oil, and then released his hold. He then laughed, "I've long admired your name, like oil entering the ears." That Han Chinese indignantly said, You! He wanted to scold Ling Huchong, but he didn't dare. Ling Huchong said, "I have one thing to ask. Why don't you answer truthfully? If you lie in the slightest bit, then your nickname, Yangtze River's pair of flying fish, will change into mud loaches dead in oil." He then also pressed that bearded fellow into the oil. But that bearded fellow was already prepared for this, so he didn't swallow any oil, but the vegetable oil still entered his nose. So he was still feeling distressed over this. Ding Xian Shutai and Ding Yi Shutai couldn't hold back their smiles, and both thought, "This youth is really naughty, but this can be regarded as a good method to get information." Ling Huchong asked, "When did your White Flood Dragon Clan start colluding with the Songshan school? Why did you want to trouble the Hangshan school?" That bearded person was confused. Collude with Songshan school? That's weird. We don't even know any hero from the Songshan school. Ling Huchong said, "Aha! The first word that came out of your mouth is false. I'll give you a mouthful of oil to drink." He used his sword to press down on the bearded person, forcing him to enter the oil. Although this bearded person was not a first-class fighter, first-class master, his martial arts wasn't that weak. But Ling Huchong transferred his abundant internal energy into his sword. It was as if 1,000 caddies stone was being pressed into his head, making him unable to move up. The vegetable oil covered both his nose and mouth and exposed both of his eyes. He was feeling very miserable. This is oil torture. Torture by oil. It's Chinese oil torture. Ling Huchong said towards the pointed-faced man, "Quickly, tell me, you want to remain Yangtze River's flying fish or become mud loach immersed in oil?" That person surnamed Qi answered, "Now that I've met with Hero, even if I don't want to be mud loach immersed in oil, I might still have to become one. But Brother Yi didn't lie. We really don't know anyone from the Songshan school. Also, the Songshan school and Hangshan school are allies, and everyone in Wulin knows this. Why would the Songshan school tell our White Flood Dragon Clan to make life difficult for your respectable school?" Ling Huchong released his longsword, letting that person surnamed Yi to lift his head above the oil. He then asked, "You said that tomorrow in the middle of the Yangtze River you were going to sink Hangshan school boats. What has Hangshan School done to wrong you? Ling Yishutai arrived late, so she didn't know why Ling Hucheng treated those two people in this manner. But hearing what he said, she became angry and shouted, "Good thieves! You want to kill us in the middle of the river!" Her Hangshan School's disciples were mostly from the north, and they couldn't swim. If the boats were sunk, then many disciples would inevitably die. As she thought of this, her body trembled with fear. That Yi person was afraid that Ling Hucheng might push him under the oil again, so he quickly said, Hangshan School and our White Flood Dragon Clan have no enmity. We're only a small gang in the Nine Rivers' dock. What kind of skills do we have to look for trouble with all of the Shitai from the Hangshan School? It's just that we know that you Buddhists are all one family, and we saw your respectable school going westward, so we thought that you were going there to help. That's why we overrate our own ability and concoct this evil plan. We don't dare anymore. As Ling Hucheng heard more, he became even more confused. What do you mean Buddhists are one family, and who do we help by going west? You're not speaking clearly. That Yi person said, Yes. Although the Shaolin Temple isn't part of the Five Mountain Sword School, we thought that monks and nuns are of one family. Ling Yishutai shouted, Nonsense! That Yi person was startled, and he involuntarily pulled back and swallowed a mouthful of oil. He was speechless with his mouth feeling so greasy. Ling Yishutai held her smile and said to the pointed-faced person, Explain it clearly. That Chu person said, Yes. That 10,000 miles loner Tian Bo Guang, does Shutai know him well? Ling Yishutai was indignant, as she thought in her heart. Why would she be well acquainted to such a notorious rapist in Jianghu as 10,000 miles loner Tian Bo Guang? And that this servant actually dared to ask her this question. It was really the greatest insult to her. She lifted her right hand to smash his head open. Ling Xianchutai lifted her hand to hinder her and said, Martial sister, don't be angry. These two have been indulging themselves in the oil basket for a long time now. Their brains are probably not too clear right now. Furthermore, don't lower yourself to their level. That Qi person said, What's wrong with Tian Bo Guang? That 10,000 miles loner Tian Bo Guang. Uncle Tian is a good friend of our clan leader. These last few days, Uncle Tian... Ding Yu Shutai indignantly said, What Uncle Tian? You should have killed this despicable evildoer a long time ago, but you're making friends with him instead? I think White Flood Dragon Clan isn't a good clan after all. That Chi person agreed in a hurry. Yes, we're not good people. Ling Yushutai questioned, We asked you before, why did you want to trouble the Hangshan School? Why do you mention Tian Bo Guang regarding this? Tian Bo Guang had been inappropriate with her disciple Yilin once before, but Ling Yishutai had yet been unable to kill him to vent her anger, so she felt that this was a shameful matter to her. So she didn't wish this person to mention Tian Bo Guang's name. Oh, thanks, Max. I'm glad you liked the videos. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. That Chi person said, Yes, everybody's going to rescue young Lady Ren. We were afraid that the Orthodox schools are going to help the monks. That's why we two brothers didn't think properly and confusedly cooked up this plan, this method that we wanted to employ towards your respectful school. Ling Yushutai still didn't understand in the slightest bit what he was going on about. She sighed, Martial sister, I'll just let you question these two muddy people. Ling Xianshutai smiled and asked, Young Lady Ren, is that the Devil Sex's previous chief's daughter? Ling Hucheng was shocked. You're talking about Ying Ying? His face turned pale and his hands started to sweat. Oh yeah, you guys remember Ying Ying? What happened to her? What happened? That Chi person answered, Yes, Uncle Tian, no, that Tian Bo Guang came to Nine River some time ago to drink wine with clan leader Shi. He said that on the 15th day of the 12th month, we are all going to the Shaolin Temple to make some disturbance and get young lady Run out of there. Unable to tolerate what was being said, Ding Yu Shutai interfered. Disturb the Shaolin Temple? What kind of skills do you think you have to provoke the best there is in the martial world? That Chi person replied, Yes, of course we're inadequate. Yingxian Shutai said, That Tianbo Kuang has the fastest Qinggong, so he's acting as a messenger, isn't he? Who's presiding over this matter? The Yi person answered, When we heard that young Lady Run was being kept in the Shaolin Temple by those thieves, by the Shaolin monks, we all took action separately without consulting each other. We all wanted to save her, but there's no one presiding over this matter. We remembered young Lady Run's kindness, so we all said that we're willing to sacrifice ourselves for her. Oh, so what's happened? What's been happening? They're going to the Shaolin Temple to free Ying Ying. Which is weird. Why would she be there, and why would she need to be freed? A moment later, Ling Hu Chang's heart was filled with countless doubts. That young lady Run they're talking about, is it really Ying Ying? Why would the Shaolin monks detain her? She's so young. What kind of kindness could she have given to these people? Why did so many people want to go and save her without caring about their own life after hearing news of her trouble? Ningxian Shutai said, You were afraid that my Hangshan school would go and help the Shaolin school. That's why you wanted to sink our boats, didn't you? Yes, we thought that monks and nuns, that Chi person stammered. What this and that? Ling Yu Shutai indignantly said. Yes, this, that, I don't dare say it, I can't say. That Chi person hastily said. So he thinks monks and nuns are the same. So they like the nuns would come and help their fellow monks. But of course they're not the same people, right? They're not all from the same family. On the 15th of the 12th month, your White Flood Dragon Clan is also going to Shaolin? Dingshan Shutai asked. They both answered at the same time. We'll obey clan leader Shi's command. That Chi person went on. Since everyone else is going, our White Flood Dragon Clan couldn't be left behind. Dingshan Shutai asked, Everyone? Who's everyone? That Chi person answered, That Tianpo Guang said, Zhujiang's West Sea Sand Clan, Black Wind of the East Mountain Association, Western Hunan Sect. In a single breath, he was able to say the name of 30 clans from Jianghu. This person's martial art was only average, but he was able to remember the name of all the clans involved. Ning Yu Shutai scowled. They're all unorthodox clans. Even though they have lots of people, they're not necessarily a match for the Shaolin school. Among the names mentioned by that Chi person were Heavenly River Factions' Chief Silver Bearded Dragon Huangbo Liu, Long Whale Islands' Chief Sima Big, and a few other people that Ling Huchang had met before on top of the Five Tyrant Ridge. He had no more doubt that the person that they wanted to save really was Ying Ying, and he was happy to have gotten news of her. But she was currently detained in the Shaolin school, and she had killed a few of their disciples before, so he felt really worried. He asked, Why did Shaolin school want to detain this young lady Run? I don't know about that. Maybe those Shaolin monks have been eating too much and have nothing else to do, so they just looked for trouble and detained her, that Chi person said. Please pay my respect to your respectable clan leader Shi, and tell him that the Hangshan schools' Dingxian, Dingyi, and a good friend passed by the Nine River. I've been impolite for not paying a visit to clan leader Shi. Please ask clan leader Shi to excuse us. Tomorrow we'll keep going to the west by boats. Please pardon us and don't dispatch people to sink our boats, Dingxian Chutai said. Those two people immediately answered, We wouldn't dare. Dingxian Chutai said to Ling Hucheng, It's a fine night, the moon is white and the air is clear. Young hero, please enjoy the night scenery at the shore slowly. Forgive this poor nun for not accompanying. She then held Ning Yushu-tai's hand and slowly went back to the boat. Sima big is actually quite big. How do you know, Nikki? How do you know that? Sima big. Sima big what? Ling Hucheng knew that she intentionally left him alone so that he could question these two people further. But for the moment, he was utterly confused and didn't know what else to ask. He just walked back and forth on the riverbank and didn't say anything for a long time. He saw half of the moon's reflection in the middle of the river. The river was flowing to the east, and the moon's reflection was trembling incessantly. He suddenly thought, Today is already the 3rd week of the 11th month. There's not much time left until the 15th of next month when they're going to the Shaolin Temple. Shaolin School's great master Feng Zheng and Feng Sheng treated me very well. Well, when these people go to save Ying Ying, a big fight is bound to happen there. No matter who wins or who loses, the injuries to both sides will be enormous. Why don't I go in front of them and ask Abbot Feng Zheng to release Ying Ying and avoid this bloodbath? Wouldn't this be better? He thought more. Dingxian and Ding Yushu-tai's injuries are almost fully healed. Although Dingxian Shutai's outward appearance is just like any other nun, she's actually very knowledgeable, and her experience is vast. She's actually one of Wulin's great masters with very high skill. She's leading them back north. I don't think they'd meet another large number of Songshan school people attacking them, so they'd be able to deal with any kind of calamities they might face. But how can I just say goodbye to them? He had gone through a lot of trials and tribulations with these nuns and ladies. They treated him very respectfully, and they were also very close and dear to him. Also, although he never mentioned about the time when his master expelled him or when his little martial sister abandoned him, he could tell from their expressions that they shared his sadness as if it were their own. In the Huashan school, besides Lu Dayo, there was no one else that close to him. Now he suddenly had to say goodbye to them. It was hard for him to speak up. He heard the light footsteps of two people coming closer. They were Yilin and Zheng E. When they were still 20 to 30 feet away from Ling Hucheng, they called out, Big brother Ling Hu, and stopped coming closer. Ling Hucheng went up to welcome them. You were also woken up? Yilin said, Big brother Ling Hu, Martial Uncle Abbess asked us to come help you. She pushed Zheng E and said, You tell him. Martial Uncle Abbess wants you to say it, Zheng E said. You say it. It's the same, Yilin said. Big brother Ling Hu, Martial Uncle Abbess said, We don't need to say thanks for your kindness. After today, no matter what kind of matter you have, Hengshan School will follow your order. If you want to go to Shaolin to save that young lady Run, everyone will help you with all their hearts, Zheng E said. Ling Hucheng was surprised and thought, I didn't say that I was going to save Ying Ying. How on earth did Dingxian Shutai know? Aiyo, yes, groups of heroes gathered on top of the 5 Tyrant Ridge to treat my illness. They must have done it in respect to Ying Ying. These 2 Yangtze Rivers pair of flying fish knows about it. Why wouldn't Dingxian Shutai know? As he thought of this matter, his face turned red with embarrassment. So everyone knows that they're like a couple, or kind of a couple. I don't think it's official yet. Zheng E went on. Martial Uncle Abbess also said that it's best not to do this by force. Abbess and Dingyi Shutai have already gone ahead to the Shaolin Temple to meet the great master Feng Zheng to request for her release. She asked that big brother Ling Hu lead us to go to Shaolin. When Ling Huchang heard this, he felt dumbfounded and speechless. He lifted his eyes towards the middle of the river and saw a boat with a small white sail cruising to the north. He felt appreciative towards them, but he also felt ashamed. These two Shutai are learned and virtuous Buddhists with high positions in Wulin, yet they're willing to go by themselves to ask for Shaolin's compassion. This is probably the best way. Compared to me, an unrestrained, improper, and nameless person of Wulin, their reputations are 100 times better. It's most likely that when Abbot Fang Zheng saw the two Shutai, he would have to consider their reputations and agree to release Ying Ying. Oh, now you remember Ying Ying? You didn't remember before? She pretended to be the old lady that taught him how to play what do you call it? Oh, I forgot what it's called. The instrument. Ah, crap, I forgot what it's called. Those two Yangtze Rivers' pair of flying fish were greatly surprised as they saw him turned respectful towards them so suddenly. Wait, no. I missed a paragraph. What's their ship name? It's gotta be Ling Ying, right? Ling Ying? I like Ling Ying. Ying Hu? No, Ying Hu's not good. Ling Ying would be their name, would be their ship name. Yeah, she's the nice granny. Or she pretended to be the nice granny. As he thought of this, he felt relieved. He turned his head around to look at those two, Qi and Yi, who are still immersed in the oil baskets, as they were afraid to climb out. He saw that these two were unenthusiastic in saving Ying Ying. Wait, no. He saw that these two were enthusiastic in saving Ying Ying, so he felt that he had wronged them and felt quite sorry for them. He went up to them and cupped his hands. He solemnly offered, "I was being rude before and offended the two Yangtze Rivers' pair of flying fish heroes from the White Flood Dragon Clan, not knowing your reasons. Please forgive me." Those two Yangtze Rivers' pair of flying fish were greatly surprised as they saw him turned respectful towards them so suddenly. They hastily returned his propriety and also cupped their fists. In their haste, the vegetable oil splashed everywhere, and some was actually splashed on Ling Huchong. Ling Huchong smiled and nodded his head. He turned towards Yilin and Zheng E, saying, "Let's go," and returned to their boat. Angshan School's other disciples unexpectedly didn't say anything when they got back. Even Yihe and Qin Chuan, who were usually curious, didn't ask him anything. It was because Dingxian Shutai had ordered them not to ask questions, to save Ling Huchong from embarrassment. Ling Huchong appreciated this inwardly, but he saw shadows of a smile on a few of the female disciples. Unavoidably, he now found himself in a difficult situation. He thought, "They must be thinking that Ying Ying is my sweetheart. Actually, there's nothing between Ying Ying and me, but since they're not asking me anything, how do I explain?" When he saw Qin Chuan's bright and cunning eyes smiling at him, he couldn't endure it anymore and said, "It's not like that at all. Don't let your imagination run wild." Qin Chuan giggled. "What am I imagining?" Ling Huchong blushed. "I've already guessed it." Qin Chuan teased him. "Guessed what?" But Ling Huchong didn't answer her. Yihe reproached, "Martial sister Yin Qin, don't say it anymore. Have you forgotten Martial Uncle Abbess's order?" Qin Chuan pursed her lips, holding back her laugh. Yes, I didn't forget." Ling Huchong turned his head away to avoid her eyes, only to see Yilin sitting alone in the boat's cabin. Oh, poor Yilin. She was looking pale and her expression was indifferent. He felt anxious. What is she thinking? What did I say to upset her? He's totally clueless about these things. What do you mean, what did I say to upset her? We know what's upsetting her. Hey, what's up, Bigfoot? Nice of you to join. Glad you can join. Awesome. He was startled when he suddenly remembered that day outside Hangshan. He recalled her expression while she was running and carrying him until they reached the wilderness. At that time, she was deeply troubled and excited, unlike her very indifferent expression right now. Why? Why? Yihe suddenly said, "Martial brother Ling Hu." But Ling Hu Chong didn't hear her, so he didn't answer her. Yihe called louder, "Martial brother Ling Hu." Ling Hu Chong was startled and turned his head around. What? Yihe said, Martial Uncle Abbas also said that we should listen to Martial Brother Ling Hu's plan, whether we should go by road or by boat tomorrow. Ling Hu Chong actually wanted to go by land to learn about Ying Ying, but looking from the corner of his eyes, he saw tears flowing down Yilin's cheeks, looking very pitiful. So he decided, Martial Uncle Abbas told us to just go slowly, so we'll just travel in this boat then. I don't think those people from the White Flood Dragon Clan would dare to bother us. Qin Chuan giggled. You're not worried? Ling Hu Chong blushed and didn't answer her. Yihe shouted, Martial sister Qin, you're just like a child. Can you stop talking? Qin Chuan giggled. I can. Why can't I? Amitofu, I feel worried. At dawnbreak, the boat sailed westward, and Ling Hu Chong ordered it to stay close to the... Excuse me. He's being teased by these nuns, which is a little bit funny. Poor Yilin, she's crying in the corner there. At dawnbreak, the boat sailed westward, and Ling Hu Chong ordered it to stay close to the shore to protect against a potential White Flood Dragon Clan's attack. But everything was quiet as they entered Hubei's border. These last few days, Ling Hu Chong didn't chit-chat much with the Hangshan school disciples. Every night, when they dropped anchor, he went ashore by himself to drink wine until he got drunk. That day, the boat went past Xiakao and turned north, going to the Hanshui River. At night, they stopped at the dock of a small town. He again went ashore and drank wine at a small store. After a few bowls of wine, he suddenly thought, I wonder how little Martial Sister's injuries are. Martial Sisters Yijun and Yiling delivered Hangshan School's medicine to them, so her injuries should be healed by now. I wonder if Martial Brother Lin has recovered from his injuries. If Martial Brother Lin's injuries didn't get better, how would she react? As he thought till here, he was startled. Wait, who's saying that? Oh, he's saying that. As he thought till here, he was startled. Ling Hu Chong, you're such a contemptible person. Even though you're hoping that little Martial Sister would recover, but inside you're also hoping that Martial Brother Lin would die. Even if Martial Brother Lin is dead, little Martial Sister still wouldn't marry you. He was feeling bored, and after he finished 3 bowls of wine, he again thought, I don't know who killed Lao Denois and 8th Martial Brother. Why did that person also want to harm Martial Brother Lin? I wonder how Master and Master Wife are doing recently. He picked up another bowl of wine and grabbed some salty peanuts to eat. He suddenly heard someone sighing behind him and said, Aye, all the males in this world have no feeling at all. Ling Hu Chong turned his head around to see who spoke those words. Under the candlelight beside himself in that small store, there was another person crouching beside a table in the corner. On top of the table were also a wine pot and a wine cup. That person's gown was ragged and he looked shabby. He didn't look like an educated or elegant person, So Ling Huchong ceased paying any attention to him and continued to drink another bowl of wine. He then heard that voice spoke behind him again. A person has been confined in a sunless place because of you, but you're spending every single day together with those girls. Young ladies, bald nuns, old grandmas, they're all together with you. Aye, what a shame. What a shame. Ling Huchong knew that this ragged person was talking about him, but he didn't turn around. He thought, who is this person? He said that a person has been confined in a sunless place because of me. Is he talking about Ying Ying? Why was she confined because of me? He again heard that person say, even people who have no connection to this thing are saying that they want to sacrifice themselves to help her. Everyone wants to be the alliance chief. The person hasn't been rescued yet, but there's already a fierce fighting inside the group. Aye, old person has never seen this kind of matter in Jianghu before. Okay, so he's an old person. We need an old voice. Ling Huchong picked his wine bowl up and went over to sit opposite that person. There are a lot of matters that are not clear to me. Old chap, please teach me what to do. That person still lay prostrated on the table. Without raising his head, he said, how much is because of a weakness for women? How much is sin? Hangshan school ladies and nuns will be in real trouble because of this. Ling Huchong was even more startled that he quickly stood up and saluted earnestly. Ling Huchong pays his respect to senior. Please bestow your guidance. Standing there, he suddenly saw a very old, deep, yellow-colored Hu Qin on the chair. I know who this is. A thought flashed in his mind, and he realized who this person was. He immediately paid respect to him. Junior Ling Huchong is lucky to have met Martial Uncle Mo from Hangshan School. Sorry for my inappropriateness. That person lifted his head, and his bright eyes swept across Ling Huchong's face. It was really Hangshan School's Xiao Xiang Night Rain, Mo Da. He uttered a before saying, You called me Martial Uncle. You flatter me. Hero Ling Hu, these last few days you've been really happy. Ling Huchong bowed. Martial Uncle Mo is wise. Disciple received Martial Uncle Ding Xian's order to accompany Hangshan School's martial sisters to go to Shaolin. Although disciple is ignorant, I wouldn't dare to be inappropriate with martial sisters from the Hangshan School. Mr. Moda sighed. Please sit. How could you not know? How could you not know that the rumors being spoken by all these people in Jianghu can even melt metal? Ling Huchong smiled bitterly. Junior's behavior was imprudent, and I didn't check myself. I can't even show my face in front of my own school. But I don't think we should care too much about these idle talks in Jianghu. Mr. Moda laughed coldly. Your name is already dragged through the mud. Who would pay attention to you? But Hangshan School's hundreds of years of reputation will be ruined by your conduct. This does not move you at all. There are many talks in Jianghu about how you're an adult male, mixing with all the ladies and nuns from the Hangshan School. So many of their names are damaged by you. Even those two very disciplined old Shirtai are being laughed at this. This won't do at all. Ling Huchong retreated 2 steps and grasped his sword handle. I don't know who dared to spread these rumors and say all these shameless words. Martial Uncle Mo, please tell me. You want to kill them? The number of people who say this in Jianghu is around 8,000. You want to kill them all? Everyone is envious of your luck in love. What's not good about that? Mr. Moda said. Ling Huchong dejectedly sat down and thought, whenever I do things, I never think about the past or the future, but I only ask myself to have a clear conscience. But I never thought that I would implicate everyone from the Hangshan School. How can this be good? Mr. Moda sighed and warmly said, For the past 5 days, I've been prying into your boats every night. Ling Hu Chong let out an ah and thought, Marshal Uncle Mo has been prying into our boats for 5 nights already, but I didn't even notice him. I'm really incompetent. Mr. Moda went on. I saw you slept on the stern of the boat every night. You don't even chat with any of them. Your conduct is irreproachable with these Hangshan schools' female disciples. Brother Ling Hu, you're not only not a loafer, but you're actually a real gentleman. Even though the boat is full of young nuns and pretty maidens, you never showed any interest in them. Not even one night. But for tens of nights, you didn't show any interest. Your type of person, a gentleman, is really rare nowadays. I, Moda, really admire you. He raised his right thumbs up, praising him. Then he slammed his fist down. Come, come, come. I, Moda, am saluting you. He picked up the wine pot and poured wine for them. Ling Hu Chong said, Marshal Uncle Mo's words scare his nephew here. Little nephew's conduct is mostly improper. That's why I wasn't tolerated in my own school. But these Hangshan school, these martial sisters who I'm traveling with, why would I dare to offend them? Mr. Moda laughed a few times before answering. To be frank, this is actually the true colors of males. If I, Moda, were still in my 20s and had to accompany all these ladies every night, I wouldn't be able to follow your example in maintaining my moral integrity. This is rare, very rare. Come, bottoms up. The two of them lifted their wine bowls and gulped them down. Then they laughed together. Oh yeah, if you don't remember, Moda is the leader of the Hangshan school. Okay, the other Hangshan school. Ling Hu Chong saw that Mr. Moda's appearance was unrestrained and his clothing and personal adornments were poor. He didn't look like an earth-shattering figure of a school leader in Jianghu, but as his eyes swept across, it was sharp as a knife edge. But his fierce look disappeared immediately, and he again became a sleepy old man. Ling Hu Chong thought, the Hangshan's leader Ding Xian Chitai is kind and gentle. Taishan's leader, Priest Tianmen, is dignified and sincere. Songshan's leader, Zuo Longshan, is like a dangerous bird of prey. My respected master is a refined gentleman. Marshal Uncle Mo's appearance, on the other hand, is common and humble, just like any other ordinary person. However, within the 5 mountain sword schools' 5 leaders, he's actually the wisest one. I, Ling Hu Chong, am only a crude fellow compared to them. I still lack by a long distance. Mr. Moda said, when I was in Hunan, I heard about you mixing together with the nuns and ladies from the Hangshan school. I was really surprised. I wonder how Dingxian Chitai could allow this matter to arise from her school. Later, I found out your whereabouts from the White Flood Dragon Clan and caught up with you. Brother Linghu, when you made that disturbance in the Hongshan's Jade House, at that time I, Moda, firmly believed that you were a frivolous young man. Later, after you helped my martial brother Liu Zhongfeng, I held a good opinion of you. I wanted to catch up to give you some advice. Who would have thought that I would meet a hero of this generation? Unexpectedly, brother. You're such a great young hero. Very good. Very good. Come, come, come. We'll drink 3 cups. He then called out to the shop's servants to add more wine to drink with Ling Hu Chong. After a few bowls of wine, a sad and poor-looking Mr. Moda suddenly became cheerful and energetic as he continuously called for more wine. But his tolerance for wine was far less than Ling Hu Chong. After a few more bowls, his face had become bright scarlet. Bright red, huh? Who is he? Me? This guy. I kind of like this Mr. Moda. Brother Linghu, I know that you really like to drink wine. Moda didn't consider my own position and accompanied you to drink many bowls of wine already. Hey. In Wulin, Moda hasn't accompanied many people to drink wine. That day at a meeting in Songshan, there was this Songyang Palm Fei Bin. This person was really bossy and arrogant. The more Moda looked at him, the more I didn't like him. So I didn't even drink a drop of wine. The words coming out of his mouth were also rude. Damn it, don't you think he's annoying? Ling Huchong laughed. Yes, this kind of person overrates his own ability, and his conduct's really overbearing. At the end, he didn't have a good fate. Remember, Moda killed Fei Bin at the very beginning. Later, this person just suddenly disappeared. His whereabouts is also unclear and no one knows where he's gone. This is really strange, Mr. Moda said. Ling Huchong wondered about that day outside the halls of Hangshan City. He clearly saw Mr. Moda use his wonderfully divine sword art to kill Fei Bin, and then he was also sure that Mr. Moda saw him there witnessing the whole event. But how come Mr. Mo was saying he didn't know what happened to Fei Bin? Ling Huchong didn't want to appear as if he knew something about it, so he said, Songshan School has no other people who they can rely on, so probably this Fei Bin is holed up somewhere in a cave on Songshan Mountain, diligently practicing his sword art. Mr. Moda's eyes suddenly flashed with a cunning look. He laughed lightly and slapped the table. That must be it. If brother didn't mention this, I would have racked my brain trying to figure out where he's gone to, and still wouldn't have figured out the reason. He drank a mouthful of wine before asking, Brother Linghu, why are you really mixing with the Hangshan School's disciples? The devil sex's young lady Run has deep feelings towards you, so you should never disappoint her. Ling Huchong's face turned red when he heard this. Martial Uncle Mo is wise. Little nephew is already frustrated in love. This matter of male and female, I've long been indifferent to this already. What a liar. What a liar. He's totally in love with his younger sister. As he thought of his little martial sister, Yue Lingshan, his heart turned sour, and his eyes couldn't help but turn red. Suddenly he laughed loudly and in a clear voice said, Little nephew is already disillusioned with this mortal world and wanted to become a monk, but I'm afraid that the regulations for the monks are too strict. I can't drink wine, so I didn't go and become a monk. Even though he was laughing loudly, it sounded mournful. After a while, he related the story of how he met Ding Jing, Ling Xian, and Ding Yi Shitai, and how he helped them. He just thoughtlessly described every event while playing down his role in it. Alright, give me let's take a break. Alright, give me another 5 minutes. This is a long chapter, guys. A long chapter. Alright, I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Okay, so he's telling Mr. Moda the story of how he met the Hangshan School disciples. And also how the Songshan School is trying to merge all of the 5 schools together. Okay. Mr. Moda calmly listened to his story till the end. He then just dumbly stared at the wine pot for a long time before saying, Zhuo Longshan's desire is to annex the other 4 schools into his own, to make one big school. This one school would then be able to match the 2 big schools of Shaolin and Wudang, and stand as their equal. He hatched this secret plot a long time ago. Although he's concealed it deeply, I've seen clues of it for a long time now. His granny, he didn't allow my martial brother Liu to wash his hand, and also helped the sword branch of the Huashan school to challenge and usurp Mr. Yue's leadership. All these things happened because of this reason. But I never thought that he would be so rash as to brazenly attack the Hongshan school. Okay, so did you guys catch that? If you remember all the way into the beginning, all the way at the beginning, when Liu Chengfeng was doing his hand washing ceremony. Yeah. So the reason the Songshan school disallowed it was because they wanted him to stay in the school so that they could merge the 5 schools, right? And that's also why they helped the sword branch of the Huashan school to try and take over the Huashan school, right? Remember, Yue Buchun is the Qi branch, right? So a lot of the problems that have been happening in the 5 Mountain Sword Alliance was because of the Songshan school. It was because of this Zuo Longchan guy. Ling Huchong said, he didn't attack openly with boldness. Originally, he pretended to be from the Devil Sect to force the Hangshan school to have no other alternative but to agree to combine their schools. Mr. Moda nodded his head, agreeing with him. Correct. The next step he'll be taking must be to deal with the Taishan school's priest-tian men. Even though the Devil Sect is vicious, they're not necessarily more vicious than Zuo Langchan. Brother Linghu, you're no longer in the Huashan school. You're free like the cloud and cranes in the field. You're unrestrained, so you don't need to care about this Orthodox school and Devil Sect matters anymore. I advise you, don't become a monk, and also don't grieve because of this. Go and rescue that young lady Run out of Shaolin and marry her. Even if other people don't want to come and drink your celebration wine, I, Moda, will come and drink 3 cups. Damn Zhou Lengchan, who does he think? Does he think we're afraid of him? Mr. Mo sometimes talked in a refined manner, but sometimes he talked really vulgarly. Yeah, the reason he's talking vulgarly is because he had like a bunch of wine. He didn't look like a leader of a school at all. Ling Huchang thought, he thinks that I'm discouraged about love because of Ying Ying, but it's not good talking to him about the matter of little Marshall's sister. He then asked, Marshal Uncle Mo, why did the Shaolin school imprison young lady Run? Mr. Moda's mouth dropped open. He eyed Ling Huchang intensely with his expression full of amazement. Why did the Shaolin school imprison young lady Run? You really don't know, or you already know, but you are still asking. Everyone in Jianghu already knows why. What are you asking for? For the past several months, little nephew was imprisoned by some people and didn't hear of any news from Jianghu. After that young lady Run killed 4 disciples of Shaolin school, little nephew was together with her for some time. But I didn't know how we got separated later, and how she ended up being captured by the Shaolin school, Ling Huchang explained. Mr. Moda answered, if that's the case, you really don't know the whole story then. Your body's internal injury was incurable by any medicine. I heard that the unorthodox sects assembled thousands of people on top of the 5 Tyrant Ridge to flatter this young lady Run, and to heal your injury. The result is that no one was able to do anything for you. Is this right? Right, replied Ling Huchang. This whole event shook Jianghu. Everyone was wondering how this kid, Ling Huchang, got so much good fortune. Unexpectedly, it was because the Darkwood Cliffs' sacred lady Miss Run favors you. So, even though your illness couldn't be cured, it wasn't all in vain, Mr. Moda said. Marshal Uncle Mo is teasing me, said Ling Huchang while he thought. Although Old Man and Zhu Qianqiu had good intentions, their method was really crude, and they announced this matter to everyone. No wonder Ying Ying was angry. So, how did you finally get better? It's Shaolin School's tendon-altering sutra, divine art, wasn't it? Mr. Moda asked. It's not. Shaolin School's abbot Feng Zheng was merciful and forgave old animosities. He agreed to impart the Shaolin School's unsurpassed internal energy cultivation method to me. It was little nephew who didn't want to join the Shaolin School. This Shaolin's divine martial art wasn't allowed to be imparted to outsiders, so I had to disappoint Abbot Feng Zheng's kindness, Ling Hucheng answered. Shaolin School is Wulin's most respected school. At that time, you have already been expelled from the Huashan School, so it was by chance that you were able to join Shaolin. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Why didn't you take into consideration about that and about your own life too? Mr. Moda said. Little nephew has been with my respected master and master wife since I was young. Even if my body is grounded till dust, I still hope that one day my respected master would allow little nephew to correct myself and join the Huashan school again. I didn't want to be greedy, to preserve my life and be afraid of death and join another school, Ling Hucheng said. Mr. Moda nodded his head. So that's the reason. In that case, your internal injury was healed by another method? Yes, actually, little nephew's internal injury isn't completely healed yet, Ling Hucheng answered. Mr. Moda stared at him and said, Shaolin School never had any relationship with you. Although Buddhist people are merciful, they wouldn't just casually pass on their divine martial art to anyone. When Great Master Feng Zheng promised to teach you tendon-altering sutra, you didn't know the reason behind this. Little nephew really doesn't know. I hope that martial Uncle Mo can tell me. All right. Everyone in Jianghu says that day, Darkwood Cliffs' young lady Run carried you on her back and went to the Shaolin Temple. Once there, she begged to see the abbot and told him that he must save your life, and she would leave herself to the mercy of the Shaolin Temple. If they wanted to kill or peel her flesh, she wouldn't object, Mr. Moda said. Ah, that's why. That's why. Because he woke up and he was at the Shaolin Temple and she was gone. Ah, uttered Ling Hucheng as he jumped up and turned over wine bowls on the table. His whole body was suddenly covered in cold sweat, and his limbs were trembling. His voice trembled. This. His mind was confused. He thought back to those days when his body was getting weaker and days passed by. One night when he was sleeping, he heard Ying Ying wept sorrowfully. She said, You're getting thinner every day. She was saying this very sincerely, and he appreciated her concern. Then he vomited some blood and lost consciousness. When he became clear-headed, he was already inside the Shaolin Temple, and Great Master Feng Zheng had already passed him countless amounts of internal injury to save him. But he didn't know how he ended up in Shaolin or where Ying Ying had gone. She had actually risked her own life to save his own. He couldn't help as tears filled his eyes and finally flowed down his cheeks. Mr. Moda sighed. Although this young lady's family background is from the devil sect, she treated you with sincerity and passion. From the Shaolin school, Xin Guolang, Yi Guozi, Wang Guobo, and Jue Yue had fallen under her hand. So, when she went to Shaolin, she didn't expect to return alive. But in order to save you, she disregarded her own life. Seeing this, Great Master Feng Zheng didn't want to kill her, but he also couldn't just let her go. That's why she was imprisoned inside a cave at the back of the Shaolin Temple. This young lady Ren has many generations of subordinates from various clans, of course. They all wanted to save her. I heard these last few months, Shaolin School hasn't had one day of peace. From the day they captured her till now, some people said more than 100 people had gone there to rescue her. Wait, the old man who decided not to fight Lady Run actually hinted at that option earlier. Ling Hu is just not smart. Oh, he didn't catch that, did he? Mr. Moda, so Mr. Wait, where am I? Ling Hu Chong's mood surged when he heard this, and he couldn't control it for a long time. As his feelings subsided, he asked, Marshal Uncle Mo, you said before everyone was vying for the chief position, and there's already fierce fighting inside the rescue group. How is this matter? Mr. Moda sighed. I heard these people from the unorthodox sects usually just follow young lady Run's order. Without someone with authority to order them around, they're just madly running and fighting with each other. None of them would submit to anyone. Now they're going to Shaolin Temple on a rescue mission. They all know that the Shaolin Temple is the realm's oldest martial arts school, and matters would be difficult to handle there. Moreover, if they go there one by one, then they know they would never be able to go back out alive. That's why they gathered so many people to form an alliance before going. After this alliance was formed, then there must be a leader. I heard in these last few days they've been fighting over this leadership position. Several people have died and been injured, and they've lost many people because of this. Brother Linghu, I think you should rush over there and control them. Whatever you say, who would dare to disobey you? Mr. Moda was laughing happily, while Ling Hu Chong's face turned scarlet red. He knew that what he said was correct, but the alliance would only submit to him because of their respect towards Ying Ying. Later, when she found out about this, she would surely throw a big tantrum. Suddenly, he thought, Ying Ying has very deep feelings towards me, but she's very thin-skinned. What I'm afraid of most is if people joke at her, saying that her love towards me is unrequited, and I can't repay her kindness. I must repay her kindness, but when news of this spread throughout Jianghu, people will say that Ling Hu Chong is passionately devoted to her. Then she probably wouldn't want to live anymore because of the embarrassment. It's best if I just rushed into Shaolin by myself and rescue her. If I can't rescue her, then they can just say that I made a disturbance there to beg for alms. At this thought, he said, Hangshan Schools' Ding Xian and Ding Ye Shutai already went to the Shaolin Temple to seek for Abbot Fang Zhang's compassion to release young Lady Run. They're doing this in order to avoid a bloodbath in the Shaolin Temple. Mr. Moda nodded his head. No wonder. I found it really strange that Ding Xian Chutai wasn't worried that you were left alone with her school's young ladies and nuns. So it was because of you that she's going to Shaolin. Ling Hu Chong said, Marshal Uncle Mo, little nephew now knows about this matter, and I feel very worried. I wish I could fly to Shaolin Temple to see how the two Shitai are doing with their request. It's just that the Hangshan School's martial sisters are all women, and I'm worried that they might meet some difficulties en route to Shaolin. Mr. Moda answered, You can go. Ling Hu Chong happily said, There's no harm if I go first. Mr. Moda didn't answer but picked up his Hu Qin instead and started playing it. Ling Hu Chong knew the meaning behind his word was that he was going to tend to the Hangshan School's disciples. Marshal Uncle Mo's martial art and experience was not ordinary. No matter whether he was protecting them in secret or not, the Hangshan School would be safe. He immediately bowed and said, Thank you for your kindness. Mr. Moda replied, 5 mountain sword schools, same route, different branches. Why do you need to thank me for protecting them? If that young lady Run found out, I'm afraid she'll drink vinegar because of this. Ling Hu Chong said, Goodbye. Little nephew will bother Marshal Uncle Mo to look after the Hangshan School's martial sisters then. As he finished saying this, he rushed out of the shop. He halted a step and looked towards the middle of the river. He saw lights from the windows on the boats spilled over and reflected on the Han Shui River. In the shop behind him, the sound of Mr. Moda's Hu Qin rapidly disappeared. He could only hear the calm of the night. It was really peaceful. Yeah. Done. Finish. That was a long ass chapter, but a lot of information, wasn't it? A lot of things were revealed. So we learned that the Songshan school was behind like basically everything that happened in the Five Mountains Sword Alliance. All the bad things that are happening is because of Songshan and its leader, Zuo Longchan, who is just a power-hungry dude, right? He wants to merge the schools to make it merge the 5 schools to make it one big school so that he could compete with the other with the 2 top schools in the martial arts world, right? So yeah, the Shaolin school is the number 1 ranked, and the Wudang school is the number 2 ranked. So yeah. And then we learned that Ling Huchong, yeah, when he passed out and he woke up and he was in the Shaolin Temple, that was because of Ying Ying. Okay, and apparently she's trapped in the temple now, the Shaolin Temple now, and people have been trying to get her out. Yeah, so he didn't know any of this because he was trapped. He was imprisoned, right? Yeah. Did you guys like that chapter? I feel like we had a lot of information. How's my throat? It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. No worries. No worries. All right. Let's have a drink, and then we can end this. That was a good chapter. I liked it. All right. Cheers. Yeah, a lot of revelations in this one. I told you, right? We're moving fast. We're moving fast. Moving very fast. Yeah, we also found out who well, not this chapter, but the previous chapter. We found out who stole the Violet Twilight manual and who killed Monkey 6. We still don't know where the evil resisting sword manual is. Remember, he had it, right? It was written on this on the robes, on this monk's robes, right? The words of the evil resisting sword manuscript, and he had it, and then he got injured, and after he woke up, he didn't have it anymore, right? It was gone, and we don't know why. We don't know where it went. All right. Well, that was chapter 25. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining. I love you. I'll see you guys next week. All right.